Today, a brand new championship makes its debut right here in Northern California with the inaugural race of a McLaren Trophy America. The McLaren brand is synonymous with speed, performance, and innovation, which happens to be the perfect description of the all-new McLaren Artura Trophy Evo that makes its debut right here this weekend. 15 cars fielded by some of the continent's top teams have assembled here at Sonoma Raceway for the start of a brand new era of McLaren racing. Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Marine, thrilled to be here with you for the start of this brand new championship. Alongside shortly will be Rob Bell, champion racing driver and now McLaren Automotive sporting director. And it will be Amanda Busick down in the pit lane as well. It's a star-packed grid when we talk about the drivers. Tommy Pinto, the inaugural European Series champion. Eric Filgaris, who we saw there on the screen, a three-time SRO America champion. JCD, John Capestro-Dubets, who won a GT4 America championship last year. Andrew Davis, James Safronis. The list goes on, and we'll introduce you to new stars as well. And it's all about to get started right here at Sonoma. Fantastic venue for it. So much excitement in the air as we get ready to begin this new era. And Rob Bell, thrilled to have you alongside too, because you know full well the thrill that the drivers are about to experience as they climb aboard these brand new race cars.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, first of all, fantastic to be here. Thanks to being so welcoming so far. And yeah, I've had the pleasure of being a part of the development team to make this car work and how it's ended up. And this is Artura, this is our trophy Evo car, and it's been a pleasure to work on. And yeah, I'm sitting here now as an ex-racing driver. Pretty jealous, I've got to be honest. I've never been to Sonoma, so just walking up the hill now, taking some things on board, looking at the circuit, and wow, what a beautiful day, great cars on the grid, and we're absolutely jealous and just thrilled to get going. Great for the guys out there.
About to have a lot of fun over 50 minutes of racing. Well, you're new in your role. So too is Ian James. He's now the director of motorsport for McLaren, and he's standing by with our Amanda Busick.
Absolutely, Ryan. It's an awesome, beautiful day here at Sonoma as we have an open grid for fans here of McLaren to take in this inaugural race on the American Series side of McLaren Trophy. And as you look at this pack grid, we were just talking about it off camera. What does this say about the commitment from McLaren?
I think this speaks volumes for the commitment. This is our inaugural race here, of course, in the USA, but to have a grid size of 15 cars here, the teams, the customers, we couldn't ask for more. And I think the momentum that we've got, the questions that we've been asked about how can people come and join this, just goes to show it's going to go from strength to strength. So I couldn't be more excited. I
saw you talking a little bit to James Safronis as he gets a kiss from his wife right behind us, but he has plans to grow out his outfit. What are the expectations on season one?
Well, I think at the moment, what we're seeing at the moment, the feedback we've had, everybody's super pumped about the car itself. The performance is great, but it's great for both the pros and the AM drivers as well. So I think James is testament to that, the work that he's been doing at the moment. And it just goes to show the potential that we've got. So I think, again, this is going to go from strength to strength.
As we look at this front row, I am going to walk over to Andrew Chinichi as you see him getting locked into this McLaren for this inaugural race. And if you go back to qualifying, guys, it was back and forth between him and James Safronis. Actually, Andrew was able to hear that he got the pole over the radio to the team celebrating. So as Andrew gets strapped in, guys, I think we are going to have that expectation of him and James here. It will be a little bit different on pit stops. Andrew is sharing this car with JCD, John Capestro-Dubets, that comes over into the series. James Safronis is a solo driver here this weekend, and I'll let you guys go on the pit stops, but that means that James will have 5 additional seconds onto the grid on pit lane here during that stop. And as I reach in here to Andrew, I know that we talked about a little bit about the back and forth between you and James. What are your expectations of how this will go here in stint one?
It's definitely going to be exciting. We're going to, the goal is to get a 1-2 for GMG. How it finishes, I'm sure we both care, but ultimately the goal is to get that 1-2 for GMG. Be pretty historic for the first McLaren Trophy race in America.
Well, guys, they're kicking us off of the grid here. It is almost time to get locked and loaded for this race here. These McLarens are going to take to the turns and elevation here at Sonoma.
A fantastic venue for it, a great place to debut. And Amanda alluded to it, Rob, it was super close in qualifying, less than a tenth of a second between first and second. A couple of teammates there sharing the front row.
Yeah, absolutely. And from watching it, it wasn't even that simple. It was like one lap, one was ahead, next lap, and they kept outdoing themselves, you know. And it was fantastic to watch, quite exciting. And then we got a spread across the field, but you know, it's great to see that there was that competitiveness at the front, which is ultimately what we're after, you know. And it looked like a fantastic battle. So let's see how it unfolds in the next hour or so.
Yeah, fantastic fights ahead, that's for sure. We heard Ian James allude to the fact that, yes, we have 15 cars on the grid now, and that's a great place to start for a brand new series, but the interest level in this is through the roof.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think what's quite obvious is a lot of expectation. But I think there were quite a few people. You know, this is a new series. You know, we're a new brand almost in terms of one-make series in the US, and I think there was a lot of people sort of just waiting to see how it panned out and waiting to see how operationally the cars were here, what they looked like, what they smelt like, and I think a lot of people have now gone, okay, this is serious, you know, and these guys are here to stay, and we love the look of the car, etc. The grid's competitive, so I'm very, very hopeful that this will just springboard to more entries going forward.
If you were taking the wait-and-see approach right now, you might be having a little bit of that FOMO, right? The fear of missing out, because these 15 cars in the roughly 30, just a little under that, drivers that are going to be taking part, they get the chance to do something historic, and they get the chance to experience these cars. These cars are the stars of this series, no question about it. The McLaren Artura Trophy Evo, 3.0-liter engine, twin-turbo V6, roughly 570 horsepower to start with, but they've got some extra horsepower under their right thumb.
Yeah, absolutely. We've introduced, just to spice things up, a push-to-pass system, which gives you an extra 30-yard horsepower. And it'll be interesting to see how that gets used in the race, actually, because it's the first time we've done it. So we, as a manufacturer, we don't know. So you get 300 seconds for the whole race. So do you deploy that from the start to get past a few cars? Do you wait until the second driver gets in? Do you take advantage of a safety car under a restart? We don't know. So it's just something that was another thing we can throw out there, and hopefully it promotes good racing.
A voyage into the unknown in so many respects. And there's been quite a bit of track time in the build up to this. That said, most of these teams only took delivery of their cars in recent weeks, so they've been learning here on site. What has the feedback from the teams and drivers been so far?
Yeah, I think the feedback's been fantastic, really great. And again, that's kind of feeds my ego as someone who's involved in making this car. But it's positive. There's two things to think about when you're developing a car. You want it to be engaging for a pro, but you don't want it to be edgy or too hard to drive for a lesser experienced driver, an AM driver in this case. So we've tried to balance that up, so you've got both parties are catered for. And I think from the paddock talk, not from my talk, but I think from the paddock talk, we've exceeded that, and feedback's been fantastic.
Cars rolling out on track for the first time in preparation for the inaugural running of this McLaren Trophy America Championship. It's not the first single-make series, though, for McLaren. There have been plenty over the years. In fact, a very similar one has been run over the past 2 years in Europe. Different car, now everyone's stepping up to the Evo spec, but based on what you've seen in the European Championship over the previous 2 seasons, well, we'll get your thoughts on that in a moment. First, we need to give the starting grid here, and Andrew Chinisi will lead the field to green next to James Safronis, the 2 GMG Racing teammates. It's James Lee and Colin Harrison, 3rd and 4th. John Dempsey, Alexandra Hayner, 5th and 6th. Tom Kopczynski, 7th. Cooper Brohl will start 8th. Jason Guzman and Denise Teoman will start 9th and 10th. Steve Sorbaro and Neil Langberg, 11th and 12th. Brandon Kreutz and George Lawrence, 13th and 14th. And Bobby Stockard will start in the 15th position. But back to what we were talking about before. We've seen single-make McLaren racing in Europe. We're basically transporting roughly the same format here stateside. What can we learn from what we've seen in the previous seasons?
Yeah, we can learn a lot. And actually, one of the things we've learned is, you know, first and foremost, we want that good racing. You know, the cars are all equal, as you'd expect in a one-make series. So that's really the thing that fuels all of this. We go to some great circuits, as we do in Europe. So that's another thing. The hospitality unit, small, it might sound daft, but it's a small thing. It's the heart, the beating heart of our series, right in the middle of the paddock. So there's a lot of things we've learned, but also what we've established straight away is there's some sort of things that American market want a little bit differently. So, for example, we do a standing start in Europe. We're not going to adopt that here because actually it doesn't really work for this sort of track. So we're going to have a rolling start, as you'd see in most places. So they're just about, we've learned a lot, but it's about bringing it to the US and actually understanding what the US wants, and give these guys what they're asking for, and that's what we're very much about.
It is a 50-minute race that is upcoming. Now, only one formation lap was scheduled, and because of the tightness of the schedule, and the additional formation lap that you're seeing here, that's going to come with the clock already rolling. So the race stewards and race director electing to add that second formation lap because of the cool temperatures here in Northern California. Very prudent when everyone's all bunched together at the start, just to make sure everything is at the right operating temperature.
Yeah, exactly. Why not? Ultimately these tires are starting from cold. That means they haven't got as much grip as they will have at a perfect operating temperature. So just giving that extra lap gives the drivers an opportunity to weave the tire, to weave the steering wheel, get the tires warm through lateral load, but also actually where you generate the most temperature is on the brakes, and just braking hard all the time. The temperature is in the disc, then dissipates through the wheel and into the tire. So by doing this, you're just giving the guys more opportunity to have the grip level in this first race. A lot of these guys new to the car, why have that extra risk? So I think this is a sensible approach.
We'll be seeing that a lot, I suspect, this weekend across the various SRO America series, having talked to the folks making those decisions. This track, it's new to you. What do you think of this place?
It looks awesome, really. I love any track where there's undulation, there's hills, there's a few bumps, there's a few chicanes, a few curbs to use. So like I said, I'm a little bit jealous sitting here right now of these guys. But it looks fantastic. Again, the feedback from the drivers has been that they love coming here, and we had a little bit changing conditions yesterday, which made it difficult. Potentially we have a little bit of that tomorrow, which might again just make the racing more exciting with potential different choices of tires, slicks or wet. Let's see about that, but for now the sunshine's out there, and what a fantastic place to start our series.
Lights are off on the safety car, which means we are now mere moments away from going green for the first time in the McLaren Trophy America Championship. There's the pace car making the dive to the pit lane. It's a 12-turn, 2.5-mile layout that's being utilized here at Sonoma Raceway. This is turn 11. Great passing opportunity into the hairpin. Then we have the left-handed kink that is turn 12, and just on the other side awaits the green flag. The inaugural pole sitter, Andrew Chinisi from GMG Racing, has team boss James Safronis alongside. It's a Pro-Am car on overall pole, an Am car starting alongside. Here we go, green flag is out, and we are racing for the first time, and it's the pole man who gets the great jump, and the veteran James Safronis looking to try and grab the top spot here in just a moment. Meanwhile, further back it fans out, deep in the pack so far though, up the hill, clean and green, just what we wanted to see. Side-by-side fight there, and that is Teoman in the Dark Horse Racing McLaren, of course, that was able to grab that spot up to 10th. Steve Cerbaro dropping back to the 11th position. Everyone settling in, single file. It's so tense at the starts of these races, especially when this is the first ever race start for just about everybody in this championship in one of these cars.
Yeah, great to see a clean start, fast, clean start. I anticipate actually there's going to be a few people eager to start potentially pushing that button, push to pass. Let's see how it plays out, but great to see that first clean start. Absolutely brilliant.
Andrew Chinisi loving this. It was a last-minute opportunity to climb aboard this car here this weekend, his first race at this level, and he goes out, grabs pole, and right now he's starting to jet away from team boss James Safronis, who's running solo this weekend in the AM class. We'll talk about what that means for him during the pit stop a little bit later, because right now he's got the mirrors full of James Lee, who's putting in a really strong drive in that red machine that runs third on the road.
And actually you can see from the lights just underneath the main headlights there, when they flash, that means that their push to pass is active, so we can actually see when the drivers are using it, we can see the top three look like they're trying to get away here.
Chinisi leads by 0.8 of a second. Sofronis, Lee, Harrison for Tech Sport here in this orange number 21 entry, currently 4th overall, 2nd in the AM class. 3 classes, of course, all using the same car. The difference is the driver lineup composition, and in the AM class, of note, you can elect to run solo, but you pay the price during the pit stop. You have to stay stationary for an additional 5 seconds. Harrison, though, off to a strong start, up into 4th. Now the 2 GMG cars starting to stretch out the advantage a little bit. As expected, the tires starting to come up to temp, and with that, the pace is picking up with everyone just about turning in their best first sector this time through.
It'll be interesting to see how this develops, because again, tyre management will come into this. You know, you've got to start with cold tyres. That means ultimately, do you make that choice of slightly lower tyre pressures, but that'll come into your play into your hands towards the end of the race, or do you go for a higher tyre pressure at the start to get that heat built in there earlier and get out in the lead? So again, a couple of things to play here.
Talked about the limited testing that had been done in the build-up to this event. Do you think anyone's done a full 50-minute stint on some of these Pirellis in preparation?
Yeah, I'd say there's probably a few who've done that. Maybe not as a 50-minute hit, but certainly in, you know, a 20-minute stint, then a 30-minute after, or with a driver change in between. So I think they've probably run the tyres, and the tyre. Look, we've done this in development. We know the tyres are good for a 50-minute stint, so there's no problem there. But actually, when you go racing and you're really, really pushing hard, that's when, if anything's on the edge, that's when you'll see, you know, a tyre drop off a cliff in terms of performance or not. So again, it depends. Do you push too hard at the beginning and then damage that tyre towards the end of the stint? Let's see.
Indeed we will. Battle for second starting to heat up. This is James Sofronis, leader in the AM class. He has the Pro class leader hot on his heels, that very evocative paint scheme. I think if you've seen the movie Cars, you know exactly what this is harkening back to. But James driving with Casey Dennis, the team owner for RWE, and just when it looked like it might be James Lee on the attack, suddenly Sofronis has caught Chinisi at the front of this field, and he's brought Lee with him.
Yeah, absolutely interesting dynamic here always when you've got 2 cars at the front and they're in the same team. Are there such a thing as team orders, or do we just play it out? I suspect the guys have been told, look, you know, go racing, but let's be sensible with your teammate here.
Sofronis forced to go ever so slightly on the defensive into the chicane to try and keep Lee behind. So far, so good. You can see those lights flashing. As Rob pointed out, that means push to pass is active. This weekend, it's 300 seconds of push to pass, and that gives you roughly, what, 40, 50 horsepower?
Yeah, around about that, absolutely. And it's a case of, don't forget, it's for the whole race. So it's a question of, you know, how greedy do you want to be? You know, how much of a hero do you want to look compared to your teammate? You know, so there's that dynamic to play as well. You know, you've got to. Oh, we've got a pass here, potentially for second place.
Yeah, Sofronis slipped a little bit wide, but the track kind of comes back to him where he's positioned the car in this section of the racetrack. Caught a lot of curb, and that might have left him vulnerable yet again as Lee looks right, looks left, but ultimately has to settle back in line behind the multiple SRO America champion, the veteran James Sofronis. Big weekend for the Sofronis family as well. His young son Jensen, just 15 years old, also racing here this weekend. So James has a lot on his plate, being team boss, racing driver, and also racing dad.
Yeah, that sounds like a bit of a juggling act to me. I'm not sure I could manage with all of that, that's for sure.
We'll keep an eye on this battle here for second and third on the road, 2 different class leaders. But as we do so, let's head pit side once more and check in with Amanda.
Yeah, I think one of the things I love about James Sofronis is you always see him on his bike going in and around the pits here at Sonoma, and he told me that he's so happy that he has a lot to keep him occupied this weekend so he doesn't bother his son with him racing this weekend, but trying to juggle the hats of being team owner, driver, and dad. Said he's just trying to manage the one as dad most.
I'd imagine so. Any parent would agree with that. That's got to be the priority, and his son Jensen qualified very well for his race earlier today, so something to keep an eye on there. Opening 9 minutes and change complete, and it's been a strong start to the event here just what you had to hope for from a McLaren perspective to get a nice clean start to the first race.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the cars look like they're performing as they should. We've got no incidents so far, and actually, but competitive. You know, this second and third battle in particular, it's close, and you know, it seems like these guys know what they're doing, and you know, let's just hope that continues.
James Lee in the red car here again, leader in the Pro class, comes from single make Porsche racing, but loving the chance to step into this car for RWE Motorsport. We'll see Casey Dennis in the second stint. He's on that push to pass early coming out of the carousel, trying to get a run on James Safronis. Looks like Genesi had that bobble a few laps ago, but he's been able to build a gap, now 2.5 seconds clear of that fight we've been watching. And in the meantime, how about this? This is a real-world racing debut for John Dempsey. Got the chance to meet him yesterday. Plenty of experience on the sim in both iRacing and Assetto Corsa Competizione, but first time ever racing a real car, and he picks a beast of a car to do it in.
Yeah, what a thing to do it in. Yeah, completely agree. And it's interesting, actually, obviously being an ex-driver and one of the old school, I guess, having not really used sim in my career too much. But the young guys coming through now are very, very much on the sim all day long, and they just come in with that much more confidence and ability from just that, being able to use it, you know, and hone their skills at home. It's amazing.
It's interesting talking to John yesterday. He made that same point. You have unlimited track time effectively in the sim. It's how much time do you have in the day you'd like to dedicate to it. In the meantime, here comes Lee. Gets a great run up the hill. He gets to the side, and this time is able to sweep across the bow and grab the position away from James Safronis. Not a change in class position. Oh, as we've got a problem further back. This is the 43. This is Alexandra Hayner, who's had an issue at the exit of turn 11. Has that car made contact, or has it just come to a halt? Hard to tell from this angle, but she had been running inside the top 10. This is a car and a team, I think, to keep an eye on. It's running 6th at the time in the overall order. It just goes long in the brake zone, and the car comes to a stop. Very strange.
Yeah, that's a shame. We'll obviously have to see what that is, work that out. But obviously, no driver ever there, so we'll see what that was after the race, I guess.
It's a really good team, Motorsport in Action, that runs that operation. Jesse Lazar, the co-driver, has won races at the GT4 level in McLarens for a long, long time, but something evidently wrong with the car and not at a safe spot. So the safety car is out, and our first safety car intervention in series history. It comes with 37.5 minutes to go. That will close all those gaps right back up, and James Lee's got to love this. This should give him a chance to fight for the overall lead.
Yeah, it looked like James was really settling in there and actually finding his rhythm, and the car was coming to him clearly. So, you know, he's basically the winner here in terms of he was 3.2 seconds behind. Now he's 1 seconds behind. At the restart, he's going to have that opportunity to make the jump. So, yeah, never a great thing when you've built up a lead, and I know the feeling as a driver. You've kind of worked hard for that first 20-odd minutes, and then all of a sudden, no fault of your own, you've lost your lead, and you'll have to work hard to build that up and do it again. But from our point of view, that means we're going to have some close racing here.
Let's give a shout to Cooper Brohl, up 2 positions to 6th overall. George Lawrence also up a couple of spots. Those are the 2 big movers here in the early stages. This gives us a chance perhaps to talk about the drive time rules, which creates a de facto pit window. It's different between the classes, and it varies a little bit between race 1 and race 2, depending on the class, but we'll break it down like this. If you're running in the pro class, the maximum drive time for both drivers in both races, 30 minutes. Nice and easy. Same is true in the AM class. In Pro-Am is where it gets a little bit more complicated. Your race 1 driver, pro driver, he can only run 20 minutes. Actually, it's the same for both across both races as well. If there were guest entries, that does shake things up a little bit. But effectively what that means is we'll see the pit stops for the driver changes starting after 20 to 30 minutes elapsed in the race, and inside that period is when the teams are going to have to make the call to the pit lane.
Yeah, and ultimately what we're trying to do there is, in the Pro-Am class, it is very much about that AM driver getting the drive time. So it's, you know, he's got the lion's share of the stint. He will do, or she, should I say, do apologise, will do both qualifying sessions. So it's about getting that drive time, and really the pro is there just to finish off, to do the coaching, to really help the team evolve, and to help that AM driver to get the most out of the weekend. But it's very much based on, we're focused on that AM driver getting as much out of these weekends as possible.
That was something I really liked when I read through the regs, was the AM driver qualifying for both races. That's not something you normally see in a Pro-Am category, but it tells you where the focus is in the championship. Lights off on the safety car, so we're now just a few moments away from going back to green. Great news, as they were able to clean up the incident very, very quickly. It will be Andrew Chinisi, originally from upstate, make that Long Island in New York, now lives in the Los Angeles area. He's the pole sitter. He's led every lap, but he's going to have his hands full here as James Lee is tucked in right behind, now splitting the two GMG teammates. Chinisi gets a nice jump out of the hairpin, as is his right as the race leader. He's on the push to pass as the green flag waves once again, making their way towards turn one. Lee, oh, big twitch there from Chinisi. We'll see if Lee can take advantage of it. He gets through this section of track really well. We saw that's where he had the advantage on Safronis, ultimately was able to make the pass.
Yeah, he seems to get a good drive out of that corner, really good line through there, and it gives him the opportunity to tack into the next section, which is potentially one of the best opportunities on the circuit.
Chinisi driving alongside John Capestra Dubets just for this weekend, and they'd all like to say their thoughts are with Casey King, who will be in the car the rest of the season. Old GMG team excited to have Casey jumping aboard, starting at the next round at Circuit of the Americas. But this is a lifelong dream come true for Chinisi, who has his hands full at the moment, because Lee now is picking up the pace, got to the outside, but good defensive driving there from Chinisi just didn't give an opportunity for Lee to come through.
Yeah, and Lee's got to be careful because he's actually leaving himself open there to the car just behind him in that position. You've got to have, as a driver there, you're thinking about, right, I want to go for the lead, but actually, how much of a door do I leave open to the cars behind? So it's a game you've got to, I guess, just judge. Well, I know you've got to just judge when you're in the car. Yeah, good to see, though.
You've been in a few of these scraps yourself over the years, and it's always that much more difficult to play offense when you have to play a little bit of defense too.
Yeah, it's knowing when to go and when to not. You know, it's a position, but ultimately, you know, we are here to win as drivers. So it's risk versus reward. You know, how much risk do you take at this point in the race, knowing that you've got a teammate to follow actually. So it could well depend on the strength of the second driver in the car. And do you take the risk, knowing that you've got that backup to come? Yeah, that's the question.
There's James Lee continuing to excel through this tight, twisty first sector with so much elevation change. Oh, he's able to get to the inside of the leader, Chinisi, who gives him a wide berth. How about that? James Lee from third on the grid is driven to the lead overall and continues to extend that gap within the pro class. His next closest challenger in that class is Cooper Broll down in sixth. So this is exactly what he and the team will want to see. Get out front, build a gap, and then try and nurse it the rest of the way.
Yeah, I have to say he did that brilliantly. He kind of pushed Andrew into certain parts of the circuit, knowing that, you know, he's going to get a good run and force the issue, and it's exactly what he did. He forced a few things. He forced Andrew to be looking in his mirrors, and what that means is it's potentially, you know, as you are a driver in front in that position, you're defending or you're deciding where to put the car, but you're kind of looking in the mirror as well, which gives you, as the guy behind, the opportunity to get that run, and he did that brilliantly, really worked that out very well.
Lee will know this track well, and as he's driven a lot on the West Coast the last couple of seasons, and a different single-make championship based on the West Coast of the U.S., and this is a track with so many intricacies, even with the repave last year, which changed a lot. A lot of the established knowledge about the circuit kind of went out the window when they repaved the place for the first time in almost a quarter century last year. But even still, a track with this much elevation change has some nuance where track experience can pay huge dividends.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's amazing, isn't it? Look, I've driven on circuits all over the years, and they constantly evolve. You're like a sort of living being, really, and you can put a new tarmac down and the characteristic changes completely, but then that tarmac will evolve over time and bumps will appear. So it's a sort of ever-moving goalpost.
First, second, and third, all running within a second and a half of one another. Colin Harrison doing a really nice job. He is second in the AM class and not too far away from James Safronis for the lead in that class. Here comes Safronis, and we got a brief glimpse of the orange car just behind. That is Harrison, and behind him, really strong on debut for John Dempsey. Again, having not raced in the real world before this weekend. Very limited real world track experience. But he does have a very experienced driver in Andrew Davis, former Grand Am champion. He's won a lot of big races in his career. And that can help shorten the learning curve for a newcomer, to have someone who can bring 30 plus years of pro racing experience to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. It's invaluable that, if you are inexperienced, how do you accelerate your learning process? And that's, bring someone in who's done it before, guys like myself. I was speaking to Andrew, actually, and we've made errors, we've made the mistakes. And if we're honest enough to just say, hey, look, we did that, but if you do it a different way, you'll have a better outcome. And ultimately, that will bring the learning curve, bring the time down, learn quicker and learn more, and that's what it's all about.
We are effectively in that de facto pit stop window here, and the first pit caller from the Skip Barber Racing team is Cooper Brohl. We also see Steven Cerbaro from OMS making the choice to come in now. Cooper, will have a really strong driver to turn it over to, and that might be part of the thought process here, having the inaugural McLaren Trophy Europe champion Tommy Pintos waiting in the wings, waiting to climb aboard. Pretty clever strategy there from the Skip Barber team to get Tommy in the car as quickly as possible. Plus, this has the potential to cover them from a safety car if it should come out at an inopportune time.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see how Tommy goes here, because we, as you say, he won our first series in Europe and really stood out as being a young star for the future. So another great thing for this series, we are looking at this series for our next crop of professional drivers. So Tommy is now a McLaren graduate driver, which means he does some development work, some test days back in Europe for us. And as part of his journey, he's come over here to America to ply his trade over here. But it's really important to us that we get young drivers through the trophy series, and if they stand out, they will be, in front of the factory. We look at them, we will assess them, and as Tommy's proved, we take these guys on board, and these guys are stars of the future. So let's see how he comes through the field.
That's part of the appeal of this championship. For some, this is a destination in and of itself, but for the aspiring young driver wanting to catch the eye of the McLaren factory, this is a chance to put your name in the spotlight. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a real thing. We are looking at this, and it's just exciting to see these guys coming through, whether it be sim-based, whether it be track-based. It all makes sense when these guys get on circuit here, and if they can punch the numbers and they catch the eye, then there is a career there.
The way the pit stop rules work is we have an interesting moment of the blend here. It's a 100-second pit stop from pit in to pit out that must be met by multiple driver lineups here at Sonoma, an additional 5 seconds for single driver lineups. So with a short lap like this, actually, you do take some risk. It's contrary to what I said earlier. There is some risk in pitting because there's a very good chance you end up losing a lap and the safety car could catch you out. But at some of the longer tracks we'll go to, like Circuit of the Americas up next, that actually could be the opposite, and that should be something to keep an eye on. But in the meantime, it's James Lee continuing to lead. He drove his way to the point, and it looks like they're going to continue to extend that stint as much as possible as we approach the halfway mark. Really strong drive from James Lee. We hear he's expected to come in, and indeed he does. The two GMG cars will stay on the track. But for now, James Lee will make that long trundle down the pit lane, and this is a lengthy pit lane here at Sonoma. Doing that at 50 clicks isn't any fun.
Oh, it's painful. It's painful. You come in, your adrenaline's high, you've been racing, and then you've just got to sit at 50k, and it feels like it just goes on forever and ever. But of course, what you have to realise is it's the same for everyone. So that's that, you know, you can't get away from that fact. But at times, it just feels like you're crawling by. And here, actually, when you peel off into the pit lane, you then see your competition come past you. You know, it's a strange feeling. You just hope that it comes back to you when you're on the other side and you're out the pit.
Great first in from James Lee. Casey Dennis is waiting to climb aboard, Amanda.
That's right, Ryan, and I don't know if there's a fan favorite car here, but that Lightning McLaren livery is pretty special down here. I did hear from the team that it was a joint effort between Casey and James on picking that out. Right before the stint, as you see Casey getting belted in there, he was talking about that move that James did for the lead, and he said, no pressure on me. But if you go back earlier into the week, Casey's been pulling some mega laps around here at Sonoma, leading some of the practice times. As you said, it's a long pit lane here at Sonoma, but it's about 100 seconds that those drivers have to sit here before they get back onto the track for this pit stop. Tire pressures may have been adjusted, but nothing else much down here, Brian?
Well, that's the sign of a good pit stop when you see the car sitting stationary. They're just counting down the time until they know they can release the car and not come in under the minimum. Interesting here, still a couple of laps to play with if they wanted to, but GMG electing to split their strategy a little bit, and James Safronis will take his poison now, and he'll have that additional 5 seconds that he'll have to stay in the pit lane because he's driving as a solo driver.
Yeah, interesting to see the team electing to change tyre pressures as well. So you can't change tyre set in this series, you can't change the wheels, but you can alter or lower your tyre pressures. So as the race goes on, the stint goes on, the pressures build and you lose a little bit of performance. So the team jumping over the wall there and just electing to drop. It looked like just the rear pressure actually, so it might have been the rear of the car going off a little bit and electing to do that to hopefully, for those guys anyway, they will be hoping that that gives them a bit of a performance edge at least for the pit stop window, so they could be able to make a little bit of time up here.
Big penalty just handed down to the father-son duo of Frob and Bob Stockard speeding in the pit lane. That will be a drive-through penalty for the Hooper Street Racing operation. Cool for them though, father and son, to get to share the car together. That has to be so special just in general, but to do it in a car like this one makes it that much more cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that in a few places. I've seen brothers race together, father and son. What a fantastic thing to be able to do. Absolutely brilliant.
Look here at Casey Dennis, who's immediately on it. He's going to push because where he comes out, where the undercut works with Genesi, that could very well dictate the overall win of this race. Dennis, a former Sprint Challenge USA West champion, a lot of experience at the Nürburgring as well, so he's a great one to have behind the wheel. Plus, he's the team boss, so he'll know the ins and outs of this operation as well as anybody. So Genesi still on track, owes us a pit stop, as does Dempsey, as does Kopczynski and Guzman. Some of this is by design with the Pro-Ams needing to run their AMs longer than their pros, but we should be seeing them coming into the pits here in the next 2 minutes or so.
Yeah, so what I expect at the moment is it's a little bit, some cars pitted, some cars haven't. So actually in the next 3 or 4 laps, we're going to see actually where everyone's panned out. And then we'll be able to see who's got to get a wriggle on, who's got to make the charge to potentially get up through the places. So it's playing out quite nicely at this stage.
For the rules makers, when they're putting those pit lane minimum times into place, you're factoring in, of course, the length it takes to drive through, but you also have to think about, for some of these teams and drivers that aren't used to driver changes, what is a comfortable time that you can do this in and still be safe, but have a competitive element too?
Yeah, well, what you need to do is, I suppose, in this situation, you have to think about safety. So what you don't want to do is, if your pit stop window's too short, you could have inexperienced guys getting in the car, getting in it's a situation where you've got to do your belts up quickly, and what we never want to do is have something which isn't 100% done correctly, therefore could be unsafe. So we give the guys plenty of time to take the time to make sure the belts, the hands device is all in place, and that is the key thing here. So it's a safety aspect of why we make these pit stops relatively long.
Leader is in. This is Andrew Janisi, the overall pole sitter who led the bulk of the race. We saw this car come through, effectively unlapping himself here. Colin Harrison having already taken his pit stop, and with the way the pit lane time loss is relative to a lap around this place, that's kind of the way that they all worked out. We also see Dempsey staying out on track, coming through to take the lead. But for Janisi, what a cool opportunity. This came up very, very late to get to jump in alongside his friend, John Capestre Dubets. Janisi, someone who wanted to go racing when he was younger. It didn't quite work out. There is JCD waiting to jump in. Gives us a little wave. That's good to see.
I like it. Yeah, very good. Very casual.
Yeah. Well, these two are just having so much fun here together. And I think this is the culmination of a lot of years of dreaming for Andrew, who did go through the Skip Barber program back in the late aughts, but he's been out of the cockpit basically since 2009 outside of some sim racing.
I like the way the mechanics they're changing the tire pressure. The cameraman's trying to zoom in on what pressures they're giving, and they're not having any of it. They're turning it away. That's their secret as far as they're concerned, so good on them.
How is ingress and egress in one of these cars? Are the cockpits pretty tight, or is it pretty easy to do the driver change?
The cockpit's pretty easy to do. One thing that's sometimes a bit tricky, again, it's a safety thing. You have wings that come across, come around the driver's head that are on the... I
think we have our answer as to who's going to come through, and indeed, Casey Dennis, using the undercut, put in a couple of quick laps there, and that was enough to ensure that he came out back in front overall. This is how they came in, with Dennis, the car that Lee started, the number 74, ahead of the 4, now driven by John Capestre Dubets, and Dubets will put his head down and try and reel the leader back in. But back to your point about the head surround.
Yeah, sorry, got completely distracted there with what could have been for the race lead. So yeah, so it's a wing system. We call it wing. So the seat, the racing seat, actually comes around the head of the driver, which then is great in case of the worst things happen. Your head doesn't move too much in case of an impact, but that does mean it's a little bit tricky to get in and out the car.
Last couple of pit stops taking place here. This is Dempsey, who'll give way to Andrew Davis. Actually, Dempsey's just ahead. This is Guzman coming in the 52. This is also run out of the Skip Barber Racing stable. RWE, we've been talking about him a lot with Dennis and Lee, but this is their other car, and Dempsey had a great first professional racing stint. That was awesome to see. And now you've got the veteran and Andrew Davis to plug in. Did you race against Andrew any in your career?
Yeah, I believe we did, yeah. I didn't really know Andrew. In fact, first time I met him yesterday. But, yeah, when I was racing quite a lot out here, I think we probably raced in Daytona a few times together. I think he told me he'd started maybe 20 of it.
I bet that's right.
Forgive me if that is the wrong number, but about 20 race starts in Daytona. So I'm sure we've crossed paths on the circuit at some point.
Painful speeding penalty, stop and go for car 17. That's the car that Tom Kopczynski started. Eric Fogaris, the champion the last 3 years in SRO America, 2 times at the GT4 level, once at the GT3 level. He's in the car now, but that will really set them back. Tom had a great stint there as he's gaining more and more experience. His first time racing at this level, but that car will drop well down the order with that penalty that was just issued.
Yeah, we see Casey just fighting it here, using every bit of the circuit, every bit of curb use, just dropping a wheel off there. So actually, although he's pushing hard, and it's brilliant to see, he's got to be a little bit careful he doesn't just drop too much of a wheel off, because sharp edges can of the wheel, the surface of the circuit. If you drop a wheel off, one, you're going to pick up a load of dust, which is going to slow you down, but actually, if you get that hard edge and you're really dropping the car off the circuit, you could potentially pick up a puncture. So he's pushing hard, it's great to see, but he's got to be a little bit careful there.
Casey is one, though, with a lot of laps around this place, and maybe he knows which curbs you could take advantage of and which ones you need to be wary of. But
we'll give him that.
It's good advice to factor in, nevertheless. This is John Capestro-Dubets. Saw what Genesi could do in this car early on, and now JCD pushing, trying to get to the overall lead. This might have been... Oh, this is a different car off. Car 21. That is Harrison, who was running as high as 3rd for Tech Sport. That was the AM class leader, interestingly. Not sure how that came to be. Why was Sofronis now so far down the order? He had been the leader in AM. I'll have to try and get to the bottom of that, but Harrison able to continue on. That had to be a scary moment, though.
Yeah, it looked it, but actually he still got a pretty big lead, or he did have, so I suspect that was a scary moment, but maybe he's just got lucky and it's not going to cost him too much of a problem.
Mystery solved on the Sofronis loss of position. He was in the pits for 2 minutes and 40 seconds. You need to be there for 100 seconds, so that's a minute and 40, so he's in there for an additional minute. Not sure what would have caused that. But that cost him a significant amount of time. He's dropped down, well, he was 3rd in AM, now he's rebounded, gotten past Sorbaro. He's now up to 2nd in class, 6th on the road, but a long way back, about 40 seconds back of Harrison, who's now 15 minutes away, despite the spin, from picking up the class win, potentially.
You know you're having a good day when actually you've made an error, you've had a spin, especially at a circuit like this where you know the walls are relatively close in some places, so you know you've had a good day when you survive that, and you're still in the lead, you know, so maybe he should be putting his lottery ticket on later as well.
You might be right. And this place can be unforgiving. Be curious your thoughts on it. I often hear Brits compare this to some of the circuits in the UK. Do you think there is a comparison to be made?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a circuit, Alton Park, which is very much like this. Walls are pretty tight, undulation. The only difference is it's usually heavy rain there or fog and you can't see the next corner. So actually the circuit itself is quite similar, but potentially the weather a little bit different.
Well, you might be forecasting our weather for tomorrow. Unfortunately, there is some rain in the forecast. We'll see if it sticks around or not. This is Andrew Davis starting to come up through the field, just got installed in that gray RWE Motorsport machine, and he has caught Colin Harrison here. How much will Colin fight? Because he has a healthy lead within his class. This is not a class battle, and it might be prudent to let the more experienced Davis come through without losing too much time.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, at the end of the day, if you've got radio comms and you've seen that car catch you up very, very quickly, I mean, if you defend too much, all you're going to do is slow both of you down. And ultimately, I would expect a pro like Andrew to, at some point, be able to get his way past. So I think what we've just seen there is actually the sensible approach from Harrison there, which is just, look, this guy's catching me, he's quicker, let him go, and actually follow him. Let's learn something. Let's see what these old pros have got to offer, and maybe put them under a bit of pressure as well. So I think the correct decision was made by Harrison there, which was great to see.
Took the words out of my mouth. I think there's a lot to be learned by following a guy like Andrew Davis. Harrison, who comes to the championship having graduated from the touring car ranks in SRO America. He's running GT4. And now stepping into a car that McLaren is positioning performance-wise right between their GT4 offering and the 720S GT3 car.
Yeah, absolutely. Depends on the circuit that you go to, but not too far off a GT3, which is outstanding.
Yeah, just a couple of seconds, I hear, depending on the track, of course, and certainly has plenty of power when that push-to-pass is active. Pretty cool stuff there. Well, we got a chance to check back in the pits with Amanda one more time. What are you hearing?
Yeah, Ryan, I hear you talk about Colin Harrison, and I go back to last year in July when SRO announced that the McLaren Trophy Series was officially kicking off this season, and especially right here at this race. But when you look at the entry list and you look at the teams that are a part of this series this season, you can see why it was just such a perfect fit for the SRO paddock. GMG Racing, Flying Lizard, Skip Barber, Riley Motorsports. These are teams that we've seen within this paddock over the years and decades. And then you add into some of the drivers, even including our Pirelli GT4 silver champions yesterday. But what a cool thing to have McLaren Trophy this season.
Yeah, it is really neat to see those drivers and teams making the step here and viewing this as a destination. This is a place you need to be. 15 cars on the grid for this inaugural race, with the hope and expectation of many more joining even as this year progresses. Battle for the lead starting to develop here, Rob, with Casey Dennis, leader in the Pro class, but he's got the Pro-Am leader, John Capestre-Dubets, who won a GT4 championship last year, right on his heels.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about different classes before, and do you let the guy past or not? This is for the race lead, though. This is different. You know, we want to win. So whether this is these guys are in different classes or not, I think we're going to see these guys going for it. And it might just come down to something as simple of how long's left on their push to pass.
Well, this closed, and it closed very quickly. I think we got a chance to look back on what caused that gap that was up over 2 seconds to come down very quickly. Wow, that was a rapid closing rate there as our overall leader caught the back of the pack.
Yeah, difficult, very difficult when you come across an inexperienced driver going a little bit slower. Nightmare, because you can see it coming and you're not sure whether to go left or right. But I guess for us watching, it's given us an opportunity to see them racing out front now.
I'll take it, that's for sure. Nose to tail here and nothing between these two. JCD, if you're not familiar with John Capestre-Dubets, he's someone who will absolutely grab the reins and go for it if the opportunity is there. He's been smiling all weekend long that he's had this chance to drive with GMG this weekend and loving every bit of it. Do have one other penalty to pass along. This is going to car 3. We'll get to that in a second because John Capestre-Dubets saw the gap and he went for it. Casey Dennis kept that lane open to the inside, and JCD was not waiting around.
No, he took that opportunity. Didn't need to be asked twice, did he? It was a gap, and he stuck that car right in the middle of it. So quite a decisive move, I have to say.
Post-race time penalty, though, coming to Spencer Bucknam, car number 3 from Flying Lizard Motorsports. That was a pit lane time infraction. If you are under if you are under the time by 2 seconds or fewer, effectively, it's a multiplier of the amount of time that you are under the minimum. I'm not sure I explained that very well, but that's why it's a time penalty post-race rather than a drive-through, which is handed out for more egregious penalties. Meantime, here comes Eric Filgueras around Sorbaro, able to pick up a spot. That's a car that's recovering from a penalty earlier. Remember, they had the drive-through, but still are situated in a strong third in class. He's got Bucknam hot on his heels, but of course that car still has that 5-second time penalty that will be added at the end of the race. Cool livery on this car. Tom Kopczynski owns a couple of breweries in upstate New York. This one, Thin Man Brewery, and they've got a Buffalo Bills themed Pilsner, the Pils Mafia. If you're familiar with the Bills, you know that their fans are known as the Bills Mafia. So a little play on words there, and it's a fun livery. If you go look at it up close, they've got some depictions of people doing some silly things, which the Bills Mafia is known for doing in their tailgates before NFL games. Tom and Eric, they've been working together for a long time and have been looking forward to driving together for a long time. It finally works out to do so here this season. That coach-student relationship, that's so important. And when you've got someone that you click with, you just try and keep that relationship going year after year. That's what Tom and Eric have done.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic. You know, at the end of the day, what you're trying to establish is what does your less experienced driver, what does he need out of the car? And actually, one of the things with sharing a car with other people, always in GT racing especially, is you set the car up for the lap time, absolutely, and what you want, but you've also always got that sort of one eye on what does your teammate want, what does that less experienced driver want, because ultimately all pro drivers will be within a very small period of a very small window of timing. They'll all be very similar, within 2 or 3 tenths of each other. And actually the bigger factor here is the guys who've done less racing, the amateur drivers. You can, by coaching them or getting the car in the correct window for them, you could find 2 or 3 seconds over a race again. So it's actually a really interesting dynamic, and you've got to be a little bit you can't be too selfish. You've got to be thinking of the whole team as well, you know, because ultimately as a pro driver, that's your job, to put the team on top and to get that race win for your AM driver.
Couple other penalties. It looks like the Filgaris car will have a minuscule time penalty at the end of the race, and I think Steven Sorbaro, the other, that will have a time penalty, currently down in 11th overall. Watching a couple of different classes overlapping here. This is the 7th place car on the road, with Cook coming through, making a pass on, I think, Stockard there, putting him another lap down. Good run from Cook to this point. Car that was started by Dennis Tillman from the Dark Horse Racing stable. Cook turning in some pretty good lap times at this stage. Just under 6 minutes left. John Capestro-Dubets leads by 2 seconds over Casey Dennis. Andrew Davis running a strong 3rd overall, but 2nd in the Pro-Am class. Dennis looks set to take the inaugural Pro Class win if things continue in a copacetic manner. That was a frightening moment there as Tommy Pintos continues to push.
Yeah, that was brave. That was on the edge, that's for sure. And knowing Tommy, that's kind of how he drives. It's all or nothing. So I'm not surprised to see that. Little bit of the car on the edge there, and in the other side of the curve.
He's caught Colin Harrison here for 4th on the road. He's trying to reel in Dennis for the Pro Class lead, but that's quite a ways ahead at this stage. So now it's just about where you stack up in the overall order. Pintos, of course, as we've talked about, inaugural champion of McLaren Trophy Europe a couple of years ago. Had a strong run, was, I think, 3rd in the championship last year with a different co-driver. Looking to the inside here, and he will take 4th away. But now one of the McLaren graduate drivers on his way, perhaps, to a spot within the factory driver lineup. That's certainly his aspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said earlier, we're really taken a shine to Tommy, just a young, professional, well-rounded driver, you know, and it's something that he's got time on his side, you know, young guy, and hopefully he can ply his trade, learn the tracks in America, and as our series grows and our car park over here grows in general, then hopefully he's in a good position that we can work him out here.
Came up through Ginetta Jr. like so many do. Lando Norris got started in that, and so many other top-level drivers did as well before making his step into GT4 and now into McLaren Trophy. Continuing to watch Colin Harrison, who I think he's having fun the way he's throwing that car around.
Yeah, he looked like it. It just seems to me like the tyres are potentially coming to the end of their operating window of life. So we've got a few cars look like they've got quite a bit of understeer in places, yet as we saw there, almost drifting through a few corners as well. So it's probably that point of the race as a driver where you know the tyres are past the best. This will be performance in them, of course, but ultimately it's that thing, they're getting hot, and yeah, the more you do that though, of course, the more you start understeering, the more you start to slide the tyre, it then gets worse because you're heating the tyre up more and more. The surface of the tyre then is too hot, so you've got to be careful. It's great to watch, it's amazing, the drift, but actually you're just damaging the tyre doing that. So there's a balance between sort of showboating and actually getting the job done.
Right now, John Capestro-Dubets is getting the job done. 2.6 seconds clear. There's the gap right there for the lead overall. I think that's John Dempsey there watching. Andrew Davis ply his trade. Currently 3rd overall, 2nd in Pro-Am, but great performance here in the Pro Class from RWE Casey Dennis. RWE right now has 2 cars in the top 3 overall, so it's been an outstanding performance for them.
Yeah, they'll be happy with that. Spoke to the guys yesterday. They were loving the car and couldn't wait to get racing. And I think the livery is pretty fun as well. So they'll be having a good time. And I always found after the race, you know, it was that time where you get together, especially as teammates, and it's that over a dinner, over a beer, or whatever you want to. Whatever you want to be doing after, it's that camaraderie and that chat about what happened in the race. Oh, this, you know, I was sideways in this corner and I passed in this corner, and that's something that I always used to love, which is the after the race camaraderie. And in our race centre, we'll all be in there, and we'll make sure that we have there's a great atmosphere in there, and will be people talking about this race and being the first one talking about it for a long time, hopefully.
Yeah, it can be as much fun debriefing post-race and swapping your war stories as the race itself. John Capestro-Dubets, though, enjoying every moment of this. He's coming around, able to see the white flag this time by. How about this? This car sat on the overall pole thanks to a great qualifying effort from Andrew Janisi. And now JCD looking to finish the deal, but it hasn't come easy. It's been a great fight between the 4 and the 74. They've been 1-2 most of the race, but actually for the 74, James Lee's first stint, coming from 3rd on the grid, getting to the overall lead even before the pit stops. That was maybe the drive of the day.
Yeah, I'd say so. He really worked hard for that. He really worked it out. Like we said, when he was actually overtaken, he was clearly thinking about it. You know, what you've got to do is put yourself in the position where you're thinking 3 or 4 corners ahead. So where can I overtake the car in front? Actually, it's not this corner, but if I put him onto the defensive line and get the line for the next corner, I can attack in the 3rd corner after that. So he actually worked it out really, really well. Really interesting to watch, and yeah, so hats off, and I think that's potentially right. That's a good call. I think he was probably caught the eye of that first stint, was potentially the best race of the day, best drive of the day.
It was a great way to whet the appetite for the rest of the season to come. We've got another race here tomorrow, then trips to Circuit of the Americas, Virginia International Raceway, Elkhart Lake and Road America, and finally the Brickyard, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, to close out the season. 5 iconic venues here in North America in the inaugural season of McLaren Trophy America. From pole position, GMG Racing with Andrew Janizzi and John Capestro-Dubets coming through the final corner, and inaugural victory goes to GMG, JCD, and Andrew Janisi. There he is with the phone out, celebrating victory at Sonoma Raceway. Casey Dennis comes home 2nd overall, but with the win in the pro class, and now we wait for Andrew Davis to complete the overall podium in 3rd spot. Here's the leader in AM, Colin Harrison for Tech Sport Racing. Had the spin, but was able to recover, and now just has 2 corners left to negotiate, and he'll be a race winner in McLaren Trophy America. One last left-hand bend to go for Colin Harrison, and he'll see the checkered flag as your AM class winner in race 1 of 2025. This battle is not done just yet. We've got Cook on the heels of Safronis. This is for 2nd and 3rd in the AM class. James Safronis, who started 2nd overall, but had that long pit stop that put him on the back foot, fighting for all he's worth, but so is Cook, who clipped the tire bundle on the inside of the hairpin. That arrested his momentum, and Safronis will hang on for 2nd, while Cook will have to settle for 3rd in the Dark Horse Racing McLaren Artura Trophy Evo. What a debut for the series and the new car. 14 of the 15 starters make it to the finish, just 1 full course yellow. A fantastic start to a series with so much promise. Race results, provisional of course, pending post-race tech and some time penalties that are still getting factored in. But John Capestro-Dubets and GMG take the overall victory ahead of Casey Dennis, who wins in the Pro Class. Meanwhile, Andrew Davis, 2nd in Pro-Am, 3rd on the road. Then in AM, Colin Harrison, 4th overall, takes the win in class ahead of James Safronis. And Cook in the number 5 car. Eric Filgaris recovers to finish 3rd in Pro-Am. Wow, wow, wow. Gotta love the fact, though, that 14 of the 15 cars, their first time of asking, make it to the checkered flag.
Yeah, that's brilliant to see. It's testament to the work that's been done back in base. Well done to everyone for back in Woking. They'll all be watching this, of course. And it's fantastic to see, you know, at the end of the day, we've got a producer car which can finish these races, and these guys and girls enjoying it. So absolutely brilliant to see. Fantastic.
I will say, to a man and woman, everyone I've talked to who's driven one of these things has glowing reviews. There's no question they've enjoyed driving them, and now we're going to get to hear what their response is after racing one of these cars.
Yeah, because driving's very different to racing. You know, you can be driving around, but you're not necessarily pushing at 100% all the time. And actually get into racing, and with that pressure of someone behind you putting you under pressure, or you know, you're bouncing off curbs, etc., it does mean that there's a lot more pressure on the driver. There's a lot more things to think about, and ultimately you start feeling the car in a different light. You start having that bit more understeer. You start hearing squeaks in your head, or what's that problem? So yeah, it's brilliant to see the cars coming back into pit lane here.
One strange thing to note, looks like Tommy Pinto stopped on the final lap, only made it to the first sector of the last lap. So that might be something to look into, but still finishes second in the Pro Class, behind the Pro Class winners of Dennis and Lee. A look back on the inaugural race for McLaren Trophy America. And it was a GMG Racing front row. They were able to consolidate the top two. After that, Andrew Janisi, in his first race in well over a decade, took and held the lead early on. But James Lee was the early mover, fighting with James Sofronis initially, then got by Janisi. Later in the race, we had Colin Harrison go for a spin, but was able to recover. This was a close moment for the car that ended up winning in the Pro Class, but that could have gone a completely different way. There's Janisi watching on. Not sure if that was frustration or elation, but there's the smile on his face at the end of the day. Lap traffic certainly had a part to play in this race. This was Tommy Pinto coming up through the field, picking up a position there, but at the end of it, GMG with the inaugural win in McLaren Trophy America. Well, there's the cars in Parc Fermé. Drivers out of the car. That debrief you were talking about earlier, Rob, it's already starting. Lots of hand slapping and back slapping, plenty to smile about.
Yeah, there'll be some elated people down there, but ultimately there'll be some disappointment as well, and lots of learnings. So let's see. They'll all be mixing after, and we'll find out more information.
Exactly. Well, let's hear from some of the winners here today with Amanda down in Parc Fermé.
All right, and there is only the first race of an inaugural season, and the overall win goes to the guys that started on the pole position. And Andrew, when you look at just this first race here, what does it mean to a career to have this on your resume?
It means a lot. Definitely means a lot. First pro race, basically. Yeah, no, it means a lot. I mean, it was a learning experience. That I made mistakes. You guys won. But he helped salvage it for sure. It was cool to watch. I mean, this is why that two-driver pairing is so exciting. Yeah. Let's go! Let's go!
Yeah, JCD, first one, you know you're part of this with GMG and just being a part of this in your career as well.
Yeah, I mean, first we got to say thank you to Kevin and Casey King. I mean, we'd never be here without him, so we miss you, man, and the prayers are with you, and this one's definitely for you. I can't say thank you enough to my teammate. He did an amazing job in qual. He was fighting with one of the legends in the sport, you know, and this is his debut, so I couldn't be more proud to be here alongside him. I'm so excited to be a part of this GMG family. We've really done a lot here in the off season. I can't wait to see what we do in the season, so game on, let's go.
Well, as I show you the rest of the McLarens down here, I do want to give a nice shout out to the Pro-Am pairing and that Lightning McLaren car. We also have to give it up to your Am winner today here in Colin Harrison for Tech Sport. They were so happy. Race 1 here in Sonoma is over. We'll see you tomorrow for race number 2.